All right, we'll get we'll give them a couple more minutes.
That's what they said. 3 o'clock. My experience with them has been the last possible time.
Call. They on their way. Okay. All right, like we'd like to call this entitlement committee meeting to order. We have all the council members here except President Small with our attorney, Mr. Linder, and then from the administration, they're here as well. Today, entitlement committee meeting is looking at the cooperative district that has been submitted by Councilman Carroll. So today we'll be going over that documentation, and then the entitlement committee members. I am the chair, and then we have Councilman Carroll and Vice President Gina Gregory. I will now turn this over to Councilman Carroll and Carrie, and then we can move over if any council members have any questions, as well as the administration if they have anything that they would like to share regarding the documentation. Hold up. We're gonna hold up, Chief Barr. Councilman Carroll.
All right. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for all of you that are here today and all of you that have read and reread all of the information in so many different iterations. Just a little bit of history. Over the last year and a half, we've looked for an avenue that would properly get us to a point to where we could actually do affordable housing in a manner that is conducive to the city itself as far as it goes to revitalizing neighborhoods. We started out trying to use only the RDA, or the Downtown Redevelopment Authority. And in that case, we quickly found out that in using that method, we couldn't go beyond a certain distance in mileage or 3 miles from the central business district, nor could we build houses with that agreement. Then we tried to change the parameters of the CBD, which is the central business district, to include the envelope of 165 around to 65 down to 10 and back into the downtown area, which excluded certain council districts or portions of the city, or certain council districts couldn't be reached, like Gina Gregory out in District 7, who had specific areas that she would like to revitalize, like Mobile Terrace and some Hillsdale areas, which presented another challenge to us to make sure that we could get all of the council districts in. Finally, we met with the administration's attorney, Ricardo Woods, and the county's attorney, Jay Ross, and also the RDA's attorney, Preston Boats. And in that meeting, with all the attorneys present, we came to a conclusion presented to us by Preston Boats that cooperative district, or a capital cooperative district, would probably be the best way to move forward with this in order to make sure that we can accomplish all the goals that we're trying to meet. So over the last 9 months or so, or maybe a little longer, we have been studying and researching other cities, the legislation throughout the state, other areas that have done cooperative districts and capital cooperative districts to see how they work, and then putting an instrument into place based on our needs in the city of Mobile and based on the needs of neighborhoods that have been underserved for a long time. If you read the information in place, you know that we have a petition in place saying that we have the need and that the need is present. And if you've also read the other information, you know that the biggest driver of this is the funding agreement that sets aside the boundaries and a specific lasered area of need where those capital dollars will be spent, and shows what areas of the city would be revitalized and how those monies would be spent and how they would revolve back and how they would continue to go. I think with that said, we've met then with the administration again, with the chief of staff, also with the city attorney, Ricardo Woods, Steve McNair, and a few other members of the administration, again, to answer any questions that they may have. At that time, we took into consideration, we heard every question that they had, and I think at this point in time, we have answered every question that they had, and we put every safety in place that they have requested of us. So at this time, if there are any questions that you guys may have based on all the information that is in front of you in the direction that I'm asking that we may possibly go, I'm willing to answer anything that you may have. Carrie, if I've left out anything, please feel free. But I think, well, no, I don't think, I know that we have a legal instrument here that is totally legal, and it stands up legally, and it does the things that we need it to do. The best part of it is that it has an entity that does this day in and day out. It concentrates solely on revitalization and affordable housing. And it also has attainable housing in it too. And this entity is able to get into neighborhoods where other developers don't want to take the risk. And it's able to get into those neighborhoods and establish a block equity that then encourages other developers to come in after the fact, after there's enough block equity there to say, hey, now we can come in and also contribute to this and keep going. This isn't an entity that has to go on perpetually for 20 or 30 years. This is an entity that goes on until the need for the entity may no longer exist, and then it can be dissolved, or until there's another project or need for projects that the entity needs to take care of. So again, if there's any questions, and I'm pretty sure that there are going to be some, I'm here to answer, to hope have a lively discussion on a way forward for the city of Mobile to really do some affordable housing. And not to say that we haven't done any. We have a whole program, and I think we've done maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 houses. I don't know how many. We have other programs that we've tried to do affordable housing. But we also have projects where we've done some multifamily housing. But in this program, we can do so many things with the resources and time. And that's the biggest thing, time, the ability to produce units that revitalize neighborhoods where we're not waiting 5 and 6 years on 1 or 2 houses. So if there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'm here. Carrie, if you'd like to add anything to it, please do so. Linda, if you'd like to add anything to it, knowing that you've worked with us over the last, 9 months or so to get this to where it's presentable to the administration and to the council. If you'd like to add, if not, then Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Okay. So Carrie and Mr. Linda, anything to add to that? Okay. Okay. We'll start. Madam Vice President, do you have any questions?
I was reading over the example, Carrie, that you had for the MLK. So to do a project, each project would be treated separately, and then they would have an agreement for whatever the specific project would be, correct?
That's correct, based on the project area.
And what it is you want to do, whether it's building houses, or if you've got some areas that you want to just renovate homes, or it can be separated on a project by project basis.
That's correct, based on how the council person wants to direct the funds, and of course, the participation from the county. If there is participation.
If there is, okay. And then as far as the individual projects, it would have to be funded then by that individual council person or county commissioner. It's not going to be one big pot of money that the district has.
That's correct. Within the district, the idea is that there will be discrete projects and project areas. And the funding source should identify that project area Because again, the goal is to create Black equity, is to not spread the funding out so far that there's not an impact. The goal is to create neighborhood revitalization. So the project funding agreement needs to identify the target area and then the goals of that project.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to, it would be basically earmarked, sorry. It would be earmarked funding for the specific project. There wouldn't be like one big pot of money called the district money. If there was a project, it would be funded solely by that council person or that county commissioner for that project only.
Yes,
That's not going to be spread throughout.
That's correct. That's how that's how the
Funding agreement.
the funding agreement has been presented heretofore. That is not to say if down the road somewhere the county or the city wanted to allocate funding generally, they could. But at this point in time, in the meetings that have been held so far, both the council persons and the county commissioners are focused on discrete projects, not unlike you already do when you identify capital projects in your budget.
Okay.
Right, and that means also that, just say if I outline a project in District 2, then those funds stay in District 2. They don't meander outside the city or the district. There are district funds that stay within the district.
Okay. And that's all I've got for now. Those were just some questions I had when I was reading through the agreement. Okay.
Councilman Days, you have any questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was listening to this recent conversation, and one of my major concerns with respect to this proposal is the size of it, the generality, the size of it. And if you're going to move from discrete project to discrete project, why do you need this? Why do you need this? Why can't the city council or the county commission take up a discrete project proposal without this?
So when we say discrete project, I mean, let's keep the focus around neighborhood revitalization. So the goal, of course, as Councilman Carroll just mentioned, is to have a staffed and have an entity who wakes up every day focused on neighborhood revitalization. And with that comes certain level of expertise. Right now, there isn't that level of expertise either within the city or the county. There are federal grant administrators who manage federal funds, such as the home and the CDBG and CDBG disaster recovery. But many cities have an entity dedicated on revitalization or redevelopment, and that's the goal for this entity. Whether you're looking at neighborhood revitalization in the Oakdale-Maysville area, or Trinity Gardens, or the campground, or further afar. So by creating this entity, you will have a vehicle who deploys these projects in the project areas.
So the intention is that this organization will have its own staff.
When you say staff, let's be clear. Of course, it will need an executive director and a project manager. Let's remember that at the rate in which the funding agreements come into play, if we're doing 3 or 4 houses a year or 5 houses a year, then your staff may only be 1 or 2 people. The average project manager probably, in my expertise, can manage 3 to 5 projects a year by himself. So we're not looking at funding a staff of 5 to 10 members. We're looking at maybe a staff of 1 to 2 to begin. And if we get to the point where we're doing 20 or 30 houses a year, which I don't see at this point in time, then possibly grow to 1 or 2 more. But we're not looking at at $500,000 a year in exhaustible costs as far as staffing and staff costs, if that's your question.
Where is the money going to come from to pay for the staff?
Well, each council person or county commission will attribute a fund for that project, and a portion of what's contributed to that project will go to administrative costs. So If the county has a project and the city has a project and they're both going at the same time, then a portion of both projects would go towards staffing.
Is there anticipation that any work involving this organization would be performed by City of Mobile staff?
No, sir. This work will fall under the state bid laws. So the board of directors would put together the bid package, and it will be bid and award, and then the contracting firm would actually do the work with the administrative system coming from the staff of the authority. So you'll have, like I said, an executive director and a project manager as we get going, and that's how it'll be handled. But none of this will be managed by the city.
Well, I noticed in the application that the principal office is the 9th floor of Government Plaza, South Tower. That being our office at the offices of the city council.
The board of directors needed a place to meet, so I think we use this conference room as the principal place for the board of directors to meet, just like many of our other boards meet around the city, use the same room as their location for their boards to meet. Solid Waste Authority, other revolving funds, other boards that don't have places to meet in this room in the same manner.
But doesn't this mean that the mail and other communications directed to the authority would come here?
No, they set up their own, after their stand up, I would think they set up their own PO box and their own mailing place and their own information, and they would operate in the same manner that any other board does.
This initial project funding agreement,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move to that next. I just have a few questions on it. So in Article 2, Section E, says project funding. Subject to the terms and conditions of this agreement, the City of Mobile hereby allocates capital improvement plan funds in the amount of $2 million to the project. Where's that money coming from?
That is from the last iteration, July, or I should say the year 22 of CIP of set aside monies that I've set aside over the last 3 years. That's where that money's coming from.
This would come from District 2 CIP monies.
Yes, sir. District 2 only.
Okay, then on the next section, which is Article 2, Section F, 2, waiver of cities' liens and other special assessments. Upon request of the district and for the purposes of fostering the goals and objectives of the project, the city council at its option and from time to time may waive code enforcement liens and special assessments levied by the city against properties owned by the district. Isn't this contrary to the Zogby
No.
Act? This would be the city council interfering in administrative duties.
Well, no. From time to time, the council has the ability to waive liens and things that are placed on properties by David Dockenbaugh's department, or Jamie even has the right at sometimes to waive those fees, and that's to get to clear title. This has been done from time to time by the city already, and it's an ongoing practice. This is just a way of saying that we're asking, or the board would be asking, for the same ability from the city council and administration to request those fees be waived. Now, if they're not waived, then the board will be faced with the same responsibility as anyone else into having to pay those fees in order to get to clear title. This is to make sure that we can get to clear title, because with fees or liens or anything on the property, we have to have a way to get to clear title.
I hope you won't take this amiss, but I'd like to ask our attorney if he agrees with that assessment.
I don't know if Ricardo has a differing opinion on this, but my opinion would be that it would not be violative of the Zogby Act if the city was waiving, or the council was waiving an obligation to payable to the city. That would not be giving city employees orders or anything of that nature. I think it's just waiving funds that are due to the city. And I think that would be something it could do under its general powers. But if, and I believe Ricardo is indicating he agrees with that.
Just a quick follow-up. Who would bring that request to the city council?
Presumably the project manager or whoever was managing the project under which that funding was coming out of.
And they would give that request to the clerk?
The clerk's office, or it would have to, like I said, the way it's written, it contemplates the council doing it. So I would assume it come to the clerk's office, or perhaps to, if it were Councilmember Carroll's project, they might send it to Councilmember Carroll and he might ask that it be put on the agenda. But I don't know that there's a set way to bring it other than it would have to come to the council.
I would,
It's similar to when we waive like right-of-way fees, or when we were doing the valuation of, something like that. Okay.
I don't think it's dissimilar from that. And yeah, it's the same general font, if you will, of power. The council could not, I think, exercise that power in an arbitrary manner. But again, if this is to clear title for a project going on for the city, I think you have a very good legal reason to be able to do it. But you just can't generally waive those things there just because somebody asked nicely. But again, if it's in aid of an ongoing city project, that I think gives it a sufficient legal basis.
Yeah, I would, Ms. Gregory, I would say this, that in those instances where we've waived the vacation fee, there's no objection to waiving the vacation fee from the administration. So we're acting in concurrence with the administration. If I'm not sure that would, so I'm not sure it's similar to what we're talking about here, where we actually have had someone in the, some employee of the city issue a fee, and now we're being asked to counteract that issuance of that fee.
Can I jump in on, and the clarification point, I guess, would be, to get on our agenda, somebody's got to put it on there. I guess, is that what you're, is
Right,
that?
yeah, and who should be putting it on the agenda? I mean, it's a money item, it's a financial item.
well,
Is it something that the council can put on there to waive fees when it's money that's owed to the city?
well, I would think that it would go through whatever our standard procedure is. If there's a request to waive fees, then it's submitted to the proper department and let the department determine whether or not it should be placed on the agenda. I think that would be the prudent way to go instead of coming directly to the council. And I think that's the way it goes now. And I'm not 100% on the procedure and how it's submitted. But just recently, I know of a project or a property that needed fees waived, and I think they went through Jamie's department first for request. Am I not right, Jamie? It went through your department first for request to be placed on the agenda, and it was either accepted or denied by you at that point in time to determine whether or not those fees could be waived or not.
Depends on what's going on with the property, if it's a lien that we put on or another assessment against the property. Generally, they'd come to us because we have to look at it, see if we're foreclosing the lien. It's a special statute we have access to. And potentially how this works out, it may be conflicting with if the entity's trying to get one waived and we're trying to foreclose at the same time, maybe some issues there.
Yeah, I guess my question was, would it go to the administration? If someone is asking, to have a lien waived or whatever it is, would it go to the administration? And then you guys look at it and put it on the agenda?
I would hope so, because it may be one we're actively foreclosing.
Yes.
Yeah.
See
Well,
that,
it would need to be researched, obviously, but
Right. It will go through the standard process, which means it will go
whatever
to them,
that standard
and then
process is.
Right.
Yes.
And the standard process is going through,
The administration.
yeah, so. we just
Finance,
follow- yeah.
finance has the housing of all the liens because it's a city assessment, but when it's got municipal enforcement involved, then I get involved to see what's going on with the active case and the follow-up.
Okay.
To me,
Councilman.
this is more analogous to an instance where someone gets a speeding ticket and they come to the city council and they want to get relief from the fine and the speeding ticket. And they may even have a councilman who's willing to put it on the agenda to waive it. I'm not sure we want to get into that.
That's why I
That's
was
apples
asking,
and
because
May I,
oranges.
didn't think
may I
that the
say something?
Yeah.
Council needed to. Yeah.
As I think we can all recognize, in the neighborhoods in need of neighborhood revitalization, let's take the first project, the campground, the MLK Heritage Avenue. The parcels there are all laden, most of them with code enforcement liens. Clearly, if the city's process is working forward and they are going to foreclose a lien, in a perfect world, the cooperative district and the city are not working at odds, but are working together on this. What this contemplates is when the cooperative district purchases some interest in a parcel that has numerous city liens, just like Jamie's department already has a program for code enforcement lien waiver when you're going to step in and fix up a blighted property. The idea is that the cooperative district would also have the same benefit of that program in the event that the district is going to revitalize, improve, otherwise clear title to the property. Otherwise, you're taking funding from the cooperative district just to give it back to the city so that you can clear title. Maybe that's maybe that's fine. It just seems,
Well, what I was
So-
wondering when you were talking, Carrie, is, I guess we need to really beat this dead horse too much, but if there are liens on the property, could not then the cooperative pay off the liens as part of
they could,
purchasing? And so
they could. And all this
that would
says
be the
is,
clearing of the title because you're paying off the liens basically as you
and
purchase them.
correct. And that's why this says may.
No.
The city may waive, the city may not. I mean, the city council. I mean, if we want to strike this, and the cooperative district pay the city liens off for the purposes of promoting neighborhood revitalization.
But why wouldn't it be, why wouldn't the city, I mean, why would it have to come to the city council? Why wouldn't the city have the ability, the city would have the ability?
Because the
To-
liens are already assessed against the property by city council resolution in general.
Jamie, you'd like to respond
Yeah,
to?
Ricardo, tell me if I need. Basically, if it's in a redevelopment authority, the council's declared all those public purpose for any action that happens on the property. So those we can foreclose, we can waive administratively in most cases. If it's outside those areas, that has to come back to council to get removed.
Thank you. So in essence, they can remove them administratively before it ever gets to us.
Councilmember Gregory, I'd add too that in the event this cooperative district is established, it might, and this goes to Councilmember Jabe's concern as well, it might be a good idea by legislation to provide for a procedure for that if we need one too. I don't know that anything the city code doesn't contemplate a cooperative district existing, and so that may be something that we need to create a procedure for.
Okay, I think we kind of,
I don't have any more questions.
all right. Thank you, Councilman Davis. Councilman Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, everybody's talking about this funding agreement, but sort of glossing over the broad and general, ability that will be granted to this district or, this cooperative district. I got a question about what is neighborhood revitalization? Is there a proper definition anywhere in any of this? And state law, I don't know that it says anything about it, but it doesn't state it in here. So what is neighborhood revitalization?
It is the process by which the reinvestment takes place in a neighborhood.
Okay, so reinvestment that takes place in a neighborhood, this says that the district proposes to acquire, construct, install, finance, administer, renovate, improve, manage, rehabilitate, equip or re-equip, and otherwise facilitate the construction of residential, mixed-use, commercial, and public projects intended to achieve reinvestment in a neighborhood. That's basically means this cooperative district can wield these great powers provided to it by way of the state and basically do whatever it wants to do. There's no limitation if we use that definition of neighborhood revitalization.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Reynolds, but the funding agreement also outlines what each project
So
is.
I'll get to the funding agreement.
But the funding agreement is the key to this. That definition simply tells you what all and what can be done within the capital the Capital Cooperative District. But the funding agreement is the key to all of this. There is no just do whatever. Either the council member or the commissioner or whoever is providing the funding source will define the parameters of the project and what it can and it can't do.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I appreciate that. And I'll get to the funding agreement. But this is not necessarily about any particular funding agreement. This is basically consolidating the authority that is granted to this organization under state law and placing it in the hands of 13 unelected people to make the decisions that say all these other elected officials should be making. So a funding agreement, yeah, it could be a component that's tied to, say, funding from the city, but that doesn't take away this great power that's going to be wielded by this 13-member organization. Say, for example, to take somebody's property by any device or otherwise. I mean, funding or no funding, they got the ability to do that on their own without any of us intervening by any way more than appointing somebody to a 13-member board. So say the citizens of District 4 object. And their person that they're putting up certainly toes the line for them. But instead of their voice being heard, say, amongst a body of 7 that requires a supermajority, now, the citizens in District 4's voice has been watered down to 1 of 13, and it's not even by the person they elected. It's just some appointed official. So funding is certainly a portion of this, but I think really the majority of this is about, the power or authority conveyed to a body of 13. And it goes beyond the city of Mobile. It goes even into the county and the unincorporated areas of the county, whereas the city of Mobile, let's just say our appointees all aligned, including the 2 from the redevelopment authority, we all aligned. That means we could, as a city, dictate public policy and land and take property and, many other things against everybody's will. So I have a fundamental objection to this form of governing. I think it's our job to make these decisions. There's an organizational structure already set up within the city of Mobile to make these decisions. And maybe we should do more and push their action a little bit more. But to say subvert the will of the people in order to, have some near-term goal, I don't really get on. It's not really something I'm interested in. I did print out the definition here of subversion. It is the undermining of the power and authority of an established system or institution. And I'll tell you what, the institution of the city of Mobile is firmly established. And I think this is an absolutely poor effort to subvert the will of the people who put us all in office.
Well, first of all, I think that the will of the people is spoken pretty loudly when the number one issue in our city right now, when you talk to people, is affordable housing and the need for it and the shortage of it. So when you talk about the will of the people, let's be clear as what they've been asking. For the last 3 years since we've been in office, they've asked, what are we doing about single family housing? They've asked, why are we resurfacing streets and tearing down neighborhoods and taking all the housing away? They've asked, how come we haven't given a complete plan on ARPA, and what are we doing with the ARPA funds, and what about housing? They've asked all these questions about housing, but now you're telling me that the will of the people has nothing to do with housing. Our own administration has admitted the total need and a big need and an extreme need for affordable housing in our city, but you, councilman from District 4, seems to disagree with the need for affordable housing, attainable housing in our city.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Mr. Chairman, I think it's I got the floor.
Okay.
That's what it sounds like
Well,
to me.
I-
Let me finish. Let me finish here. The objective here is not to usurp or to take away any power from the city council or the administration or the county. The sole objective here is to support an initiative by any council member that has an area that is in dire need of revitalization, a neighborhood that has been overlooked for a long time. The whole purpose here is to get rid of blight, to help defray crime. to bring back an economic base in neighborhoods. That is the purpose of these projects, and that is the goal of this revitalization and capital improvement district. It has nothing to do with taking away or subversion of power.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
I
and
still
then,
have the floor.
okay, and
Uh,
Councilman Reynolds, do you have a question regarding the project?
I hear that it is about single-family housing, but why doesn't it limit itself to that? I mean,
And
so that would be the
Councilman
question
Carroll,
I'd
let him,
ask is,
hold on.
if it truly is just about single-family housing, why does it broadly define neighborhood revitalization, as we heard, as basically reinvestment in a community? And then it expands it all the way of construction of residential. I mean, that certainly, falls within single-family housing. But it also goes to mixed-use commercial and public projects. So that's far beyond the scope of just single-family housing. So that would be my question. All right, but I want to make this one statement about it, is that while I agree, and I'm not arguing against trying to support revitalization or supporting single-family housing, that is the near-term focus or goal and is a noble, good goal by Mr. Carroll and others to try to address that short, near-term deficiency that the city has. But this doesn't stop there. This goes well beyond all of that. So if the goal is single-family housing, why do we need all of this great expansion and subversion of the voice of the people to improve single-family housing? I think that was Mr. Dave's sort of question to begin with. So I'd love to hear the answer.
You want to talk to the, you can keep talking.
One of the first project neighborhoods, as you can see from the agreement in front of you, is the MLK Civil Rights Heritage District, which the spine of the neighborhood is the historic MLK Avenue. There is disinvestment along the avenue as well as in the adjacent neighborhoods. The idea would be that the cooperative district would have the power to also participate in some commercial projects bring maybe a facade grant program or something to incentivize commercial development along the avenue, as well as look at any public, whether it's by public project, it might be some sort of community garden space. The neighborhood revitalization doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can't just build houses and expect the neighborhood to be made whole again. So the scope here does not constrict the cooperative district's, you're correct, ability to venture off beyond housing. Because ultimately, neighborhood revitalization is both housing and community development.
It also gives us the ability to partner with different programs too. Let's just say City of Mobile just got $53 million from ADECA for, I think it's DR funds, disaster relief. It gives us a chance to partner with rental properties also, if there's a need for a partnership with the city, where we can expand off to that and go through our process and help facilitate those issues. So it allows us to help and partner with other agencies that are doing the other things, and also allows us to allows other agencies to be beneficiaries of what the capital improvement district's doing, so that it can help, or those agencies can help us to revitalize a specific area.
Okay, another question is,
Okay.
once this, say, cooperative, I guess I should address at least a portion of that funding agreement. That's just an example, right?
Correct.
Of what a funding agreement could be. But let's just say that this power was conveyed to this body. That funding agreement could be the same, it could be different, or it could be, really anything, right? At that point, there's nothing that binds that body of agreeing to the terms in this particular funding agreement, right?
Well, ultimately, the funding agreement will have to come from the city council or the county commission to the cooperative district.
Well, it doesn't have to. They can get their own money, right?
If they apply for grants, is that what you're saying?
Well, they could certainly apply for grants.
Can they issue bonds?
No.
Not without a stream of revenue. And that's, I mean,
But they could take somebody's property and then that's then an asset. They would have that authority or ability, right?
Take whose property?
I don't know. You tell me. You're the ones that wants to take property in here.
No, you're
Where-
not. We're not take the cooperative does not take
Well, that's
anyone's
what it
property.
says. It just says the powers of district generally. Number 4, this is in Code of Alabama 1199B7. Each district shall have the following powers together with all powers incidental thereto or necessary to the discharge thereof in corporate form. Item number 4. Item number 5, to acquire, receive, and take by purchase, gift, lease, device, or otherwise, and to hold property of every description, whether located in one or more counties or municipalities. So the question
I
is,
think you're reading
could this-
directly from the state.
could
in
this
enabling that.
organization not be formed after they are conveyed this great power and authority, and then they go out and then they take somebody's property by device or otherwise? They would then have an asset on their books, would they not?
the only funding right now they're going to have is the funding that would presumably flow from the city council's, the interested city council members' capital improvement program to the funding agreement. And then the cooperative districts would be limited to undertaking, managing the project as the part of that project funding
But
agreement.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what I'm saying is that once this organization is set up and structured, Mr. Carroll has zero input, Mr. Daves has zero input, I have zero input. This entity is now formed amongst itself, and it can take whatever action that we conveyed, the county conveyed, the state conveyed to them, and they don't have to take the city's money. They don't have to take the county's money. They can use whatever devices are at their disposal to get money
Right.
however they
There.
see fit.
So in your opinion, you contemplate that the organization would be formed and then would go out and fundraise specifically to condemn property?
Well, I'm not saying, I'm just saying
Just go
have
off
the
the
Yeah.
ability to
road.
do
they have
Okay.
the
All right,
ability
come
to
on.
do it. Is there a disagreement from what you're saying that they don't have that ability?
Not if they don't have funding to do that.
Okay, all
You're-
right,
that
Carrie.
objection is a practical objection.
All right, let's
Hey.
get some order. And Carrie,
Hey.
so can we answer this question? The question is, what I'm hearing from Councilman Reynolds is that if this organization, cooperative district, is formed, will they have the power to be able to, even if they don't have the funding from the council members, to go get funding on their own and start, and if they would like to move forward as an organization without our funding, can they do that?
For the purposes of promoting neighborhood revitalization, yes.
Okay.
Right, so-
That's your,
That was good summarization. Thank you for getting to that
Okay.
answer for me.
All right.
Corey.
okay.
You know, so a private company, say, private individual could say, hey, look, this is a great idea. You know, I have the ability to, affect my community in one way or another. Can I put up, $1 million, and then it would be up to that organizational structure to accept it or not? Could that happen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then and I'm assuming, and then how would that work with the district? How would that money be decided to go in what district?
You have zero input at that point.
Well, I would think that if anyone were to come to they would come to the capital cooperative district, they would have to come in the same manner that the law is set up for a council member anywhere else, with a funding agreement in place in a specific area and a specific target to be either accepted or denied by the board of directors. They just can't come in and say, hey, here's $1 million, go do whatever. So the process set up by this system is to receive a funding agreement that outlines the parameters, not just to throw money at a board and say, okay, let's go do a project. And I think that's where you're kind of blurring the lines. Again, everything is centered around the funding agreement, and this is for the protection of both the city and the county and the areas in which we're working, and to cover the same concerns that you're talking about.
Mr. Chairman, so if this organization, say, were to be formed and they wielded these great powers that's conveyed, there is no requirement that they have to have a funding agreement. As a matter of fact, it says here that they can adopt and alter bylaws, which this doesn't establish bylaws. This is just establishing the organizational structure. They could adopt a bylaw that says, We don't need a funding agreement. Matter of fact, we'll take whatever money anybody gives us and we'll do, they could do that as a body. They can adopt and alter bylaws for the regulation and conduct of its affairs and business. They could create whatever organizational bylaws they wanted to, or regulation.
There would be two general limitations on its power. One would be the composition of the board of directors. And then the other would be any agreement. In other words, if Elon Musk decided he wanted to give $1 billion to this cooperative district, and he could give it to it, he could say, do what you want with it, but they would be subject to the will of the board of directors and what's actually in the certificate of incorporation. And the certificate of incorporation cannot be amended without, further down the road, without the consent of the city council and the county commission and the RDA.
That's
So
correct.
they can't ever go beyond their powers or their mandate listed in the articles of incorporation. But other than that, you're correct, Council. Yes, if I had $1 million to give to it right now, I could just say, here's $1 million for your general budget, have fun.
That's right.
Okay.
In this, it
Let me get
it says
Josh.
that in the
Councilman Day.
modified version, this is a question about the eminent domain sort of restrictions that were, I guess, modified in the second version. How were these eminent domain, how were they modified? I know in here it describes, this is the enabling law in the eminent domain section. Bear with me, sorry. To exercise, these are the powers of this organization, to exercise the power of eminent domain in the manner provided in and subject to the provisions of Title 18, so on and so forth. That's number 12. How was it restricted in this revised version? How does this body restrict itself with this revised version that we got from y'all?
I don't think I did address that in the articles. We
Yeah,
did
in the
address it in the project funding agreement.
Okay.
We said that the district may employ any number of methods to attain marketable title to the properties, including exercising the power of eminent domain in the manner provided in and subject to the provisions of Title 18 of the Code of Alabama.
Gotcha.
Title 18
Excuse
me?
me. Tell you Title 18.
requires that the property, for the purposes that the cooperative district here would be attaining marketable title, must also be blighted and declared blighted.
Okay.
Okay?
So
So that's your,
that's my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take this Elon Musk example that was given by Mr. Linder here. He puts up $1 billion and said, do what you want with it. But these guys wield the power now of eminent domain. So every blighted property or whatever out there, that this private organization now is sort of at the helm dictating eminent domain with no elected official standing in the way. Matter of fact, this goes as far as to say that no elected no elected official shall serve as a director on the board of directors. So could that happen?
almost every public corporation created under Alabama law has the power of eminent domain, whether you're MAWS or the Housing Board or the Redevelopment Authority. It is particularly needed in this instance where there's no ability to get to marketable title in the neighborhoods in need of investment. So without that tool, the only option is to try to buy out numerous heirs, determine a way to pay the heirs fairly, and then claim the property through some sort of adverse possession. The eminent domain allows the cooperative district to buy an interest from a party who is a willing seller, but who does not own 100% of the fee title, and then file what is sometimes called a friendly condemnation action to clear up the title, and then park the remaining funds, the value of the property in the probate court.
And that is to ensure that everyone that is entitled to payment for that property is guaranteed it. And the only way to do that is through the simple condemnation. Without that, you can't guarantee that all the heirs that are supposed to get paid.
So I guess that would be my question is, could the city not do that on its own? And have, instead of, say, the citizens of District 4 having a 1 of 13 watered down input, could not their elected officials in the city of Mobile where their interest is represented by 1/7 with a supermajority vote, couldn't they do that on their own, the city? Us as a legislative body?
So again, back to the purpose of the cooperative district is to zero in, have a laser focus on a project area, to acquire properties, to reinvest in them, to clear title, attain marketable title. Heretofore, that is not currently the way the city works. The city then is just the type of neighborhood revitalization that needs to occur in the neighborhoods that need the most. The city is not set up to be that nimble, to buy and sell properties, to move forward with developer agreements. So, I don't speak, I don't understand, I don't know if y'all intend to exercise the power of eminent domain.
You mean the city of Mobile using
city
the city council?
Yeah, maybe. I got one more. I got one more.
Okay.
It was brought up, with the laser focus of, these resources after this organization structure wielding this great power, same power the elected official wields, that it would be laser focused. But does this not expand it beyond a laser focus where it says the area in which the district proposes to undertake the project is within the boundaries of unincorporated areas of Mobile County and within the municipal limits of city of Mobile? That doesn't sound very laser focused to me. It sounds broad and general. Is that, am I reading that right? That this board could take action anywhere of these great powers in the unincorporated areas and within the entire city of Mobile. Is that correct?
Again, you're reading that wrong. Your whole objective and thinking pattern is wrong here. Those are the areas in which the cooperative can work.
Okay.
But again, the elected official from either the county or the city and the funding agreement determines the area of focus, not the board. You keep saying that the board does, but however, the way we've set this up is that a council member or a county commissioner will set a funding agreement. If you read the funding agreement, it gives you the boundaries, it gives you the amount, it gives you the scope, it gives you the intent of a specific area. It doesn't say that money is going to go and be spent throughout the entire county. It laser focuses on a community for revitalization. And your pronunciation and I guess articulation and view of this is that, okay, Councilman Carroll just said, here's $2 million. Go spend it wherever you want to, but that's not the case. It is solely focused on the area in which it is allowed to. The district cannot tax. It cannot create a revenue stream. It cannot, according to you and what you just said, someone can give it a revenue stream or give it a small amount, but the board would have to accept or deny that, and it would have to come to the board in some type of funding agreement of where and how it is to be used. I think that right now you're trying to paint a broad picture of what you'd like to think that the board is going to do, but in this case, this board is simply set up to laser into communities that are underserved, that have, say again, that need that direction and spark for Block equity so that those neighborhoods can be revitalized.
I'm going to defer. Because
Okay.
I've got plenty more.
Okay.
This is
We
considerably
want Josh. I haven't had a chance to
ahead.
say anything and having a question, but I would like to. You made a statement, Councilman Reynolds, about the city. Why the city? Well, could the city do this? Well, they haven't been doing it to this level, so we know it's a need. Not saying that it's not a possibility, but we know that the city have so much that we've been doing, just period. But housing has been an issue, and been trying to figure out. And the truth of the matter is, if somebody gave $1 billion, I'd be super excited right now. If that was the, I'm not. I'm
Trying to take it.
no. When you said Yeah,
property,
when you
we
said
keep speculating in
so
the
when
market.
you use the example of taking, you said somebody trying to take my property. I think if a family had the opportunity to say for someone to invest in their property, I think a lot of families will be excited about an opportunity for their homes and their families and their community to be invested in. I think it's a different terms of take and investing and revitalization. It's totally different. So I think it's a difference when you go into certain communities and they look totally different. And so I think it's a different from using the words take. And I don't even think the city has the ability, even with the to just say we're gonna go take a home. And even with this particular um, procedure, this organization, I don't believe they have the ability to say I'm just taking your house by. I don't believe legally they even have that position.
I think what Kerry said earlier is correct. Under Title 18 of the state code, which is referenced there, that was enacted specifically in response to the Supreme Court decision some years back that basically said states and local governments. It was enacted in response to the Supreme Court decision some years back that said state and local governments could take private property for private economic development purposes. That's why Title 18 was enacted. And to make a very long story short, what Title 18 under the Alabama Code says is that, as Kerry said, if it's a municipality or a county or a body like this, they can only take the property if it's blighted or distressed. So in other words, what they can do is they can take the private property then to the extent it's been found to be a nuisance or something like that needs, in other words, we can't go and take the Bragg Mitchell mansion and just say, yeah, you know what, we're going to build a condo complex on this instead. They wouldn't be able to do that. That would be a clear violation of Title 18.
Yeah.
So while this district would have eminent domain power, I don't think it would have the power to do anything but essentially clear title or things very similar to that on distressed properties.
Gotcha.
Right. And that's the purpose of keeping that power within, of not crafting the articles and removing that power, because it will be difficult to reinvest in a targeted area without having the ability to clear title. That's what's holding back the private sector investment. Let me say one other thing.
Mhm.
I didn't think about I didn't contemplate $1 million or $1 billion coming from a benefactor. So the articles maybe do not specifically tie to a project funding agreement. We could wordsmith some language to build that, catch that in. When crafted, when this was set out in the meetings with certain council persons and the city county commissioners, the only vision contemplated was that the funding would come directly from the authorizing subdivision, in this instance, the county or the city. In the event, you had a problem where someone donated $1 million or $1 billion, we could look at a different way of structuring this to contemplate that, how those funds would be restricted.
All right. I think that would be there'll be a great opportunity, but for somebody who would like to invest in our community.
I mean, as written though, there's no reason that an angel investor, or whatever you want to call it, could give the cooperative district money, no strings attached, and then the only limitations on that would be what the board of directors was willing to do and what was in the corporate charter.
Okay.
They would have to use it for neighborhood revitalization purposes within the confines of that, but then they would essentially have discretion over that funding.
Well,
But as Councilmember Penn pointed out, if somebody wants to give the cooperative district $1 billion, I think that would probably be a good thing.
well, that's kind of
Okay.
where my question was before. When Elon gives his billions of dollars and it's sitting in the account, how then is it decided that money will be spent? This board of directors is going to decide, well, we'll go put some money into this district or that district in this project, which means that this council really has no input on what those projects are.
And I think that's what cares,
And
now
again,
with this, since this statement is now put out there, that's something then we have to look at. Let's give Josh an opportunity, because Josh haven't had the opportunity to say anything. And my bad, Councilman Woods, you haven't had the opportunity. So Councilman Woods, any questions you have?
I just go with Josh. It's fine. So this is kind of, I guess, the second reiteration. I mean, we, I guess 3 months ago, last time this kind of came through. And just as far as the history, how does the RDA fit in? I mean, and again, just hashing this out. The RDA is the three people that came. I don't know if Cindy, Kimberly, or Ellis is here, but I guess that's the three people that brought this, and now we're at the point of it's in front of the city council. They've asked city council to consider this. They've also, I'm assuming, asked the county commission. I guess that's how the RDA is plugged into this, I guess.
And by statute, the redevelopment authority is tasked with redeveloping projects within the central business district and in commercial projects that extend in areas 3 miles from the central business district. The RDA has a role in that, again, by statute, that's sort of where those activities vest. And in this instance, you could see where the cooperative district and the RDA may want to partner, for instance, in a commercial project or mixed-use project on Broad Street, or on Spring Hill Avenue or MLK Avenue. And so for that reason, they have a seat at the table.
And then kind of continue on the history of it, and talking about the laser focus and going into it. I mean, theoretically, smaller. I mean, you could, for lack of a better, the funding agreement that could go, and since it's a specific area, that funding agreement could go and theoretically seek to become one of these, and then that's individual. But I guess the focus on explanation is the countywide aspect, which I kind of had concern on it, but we were talking through. The countywide aspect is I guess the fact that instead of going around and circling certain block by block parameters, it's just, this is just giving the ability to go and do wherever without having to kind of nail down, I guess.
That's correct. The county is an authorizing subdivision and a participant in the cooperative district. And without them sort of pulling back where they want to be able to deploy funding for neighborhood revitalization, the simplest approach right now is to leave those opportunities countywide in the unincorporated areas of the county.
Okay. And then I know that kind of addressing some of the concerns, they were addressing the funding agreement. I guess to kind of just fix all the funding agreements, moving forward, could that be addressed in the application itself, in the articles and everything, or I guess you'd perceive that's prohibitive of other projects that might occur, I guess.
I'm sorry,
So a lot of things that, I guess in the case of bonding authority, and I got one question about that, the bonding authority, and is there a way to put will nots for the organization versus, addressing it in the funding agreement?
Will not what?
Will not bond.
Well, we can't bond anything without a funding source and without a perpetual funding source.
So, and that kind of leads to my question of kind of thinking through to Councilman Reynolds' point of, if
somebody gives them a grant, then they would have resources and they could bond.
Right, but then also
only to the value of whatever they were given.
Right.
See, so, but
But
issue a bond, you still have to have a way to do the debt service over a period of time.
Right. So the bonding authority,
Revenue stream.
your bonding amount, a revenue stream would be theoretically, and tell me if I'm wrong, a revenue stream would be, we're going to fund a single family housing development in this area. We're going to build the houses. At that point, once they're sold and we replenish the bank, could that be classified as revenue for bonding authority or
No, sir. That money will go back into a revolving fund, and it will go back to the council person or county commissioner's discretion in the next funding agreement, or to perpetuate the continual funding agreement that's already in place for that area. So you're talking about if let's just say I wanted to do 5 houses under the funding agreement, and every time we sell a house, right, and that money comes back, depending on what comes back from the sale, then the next funding agreement would include those revenues that are in the revolving fund for that same specific area, with another funding agreement based on those sales. So it would still be concentrated on that specific targeted area for that council person. And those monies, as if you looked at what we've lined out, will be recorded in the financial statements. I think I said what we say quarterly or monthly coming to the council so that everybody knows what's happening with those funds, how they're being spent, and what's coming in and what's due.
So just so the net profit, we'll call it net profit. The net profit will stay with the authority of this organization, or would that net profit, would they be stroking a check back to the city? I guess, are we any net profit off the investment, or any monies that come back to repay for monies that were spent? Will they stay in the project, or how?
The way the sample draft agreement is drafted, the project revenues after developing a house and selling a house go back to the cooperative for building another house or improving another property within the project area. The project funding agreement also, the one in front of you, restricts any bonding of those revenues. If I'm hearing you correctly, what you are asking is partially whether or not the restriction on bonding can be placed in the articles of incorporation.
Yes, correct.
I believe that is a decision for the council. So, by code, they have all of those powers. The entity does. To give those powers back to them down the road, you would have to amend the articles of incorporation. If you were to remove that power at this point in time.
You talk about the bonding power.
Right. The revenues, no, as to your second question, again, I think I've already answered it, but the idea is that under Councilman Carroll's idea is that the funds revolve and they go into another project within the project area in an effort to build Black equity.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
That's all I had.
Councilman Days.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I like both of y'all. But what I hear you, what you keep coming back to is trying to limit the powers of this organization to specific funding agreements. And you can't do that because the powers that this organization has are in the state code. And the state code is very broadly written. And so this authority is not limited to a funding agreement. It's limited to a funding agreement with respect to that particular project, but it has powers, other powers. And is it not true that under state law, this authority would have various means of raising money on their own?
I mean, yes, like any other public corporation, yes.
Okay. And then let's say they did raise some revenues on their own and they did borrow some money. And I don't know the answer to this question I'm asking. And they did borrow some money through bonds or otherwise and defaulted. Is there any recourse from the bondholders to the city of Mobile?
So the statute makes it clear that the revenues that they can bond are what are considered public revenues. And let me read you the definition. Any one or more of the items of tax proceeds and other revenues that a municipality or county is authorized to pledge for its bonds under the provisions of Section 11-81-16. In my opinion, I don't see how they could bond $1 million or $1 billion from a donor. The bonding would have to be taxes that then the council allocated through a taxing agreement that you allocated for them to share. So that example, of course, I'm a little bit familiar with is the Bass Pro Shop example, which was formed as a cooperative district over there. Those aren't the types of projects that are envisioned in the project funding agreement. Again, I understand what you're saying.
You keep coming back to the project funding agreement. Leave that aside. We're talking about the powers that this authority has once created.
But without a tax being allocated to the entity through council or commission grant, without the tax being redistributed through either the county or the council to the entity, then what can they bond?
Well, they could,
What she's
hold up. Let's
simply
get some
trying to
water.
say
Wait.
here
Let's get some-
is that how are you going to bond anything without a perpetual revenue source? And you're talking about one-time lump sums that are a flash in the pans. In order, we all know to bond anything, you have to have a certain credit rating, you have to show a certain economic standing, a balance sheet, and you have to show a source of perpetual income and not a one-time source of income. Councilman Jones, I'm pretty sure you're extremely familiar with that process, being a banker of so many years and knowing that in order to have any type of credit extended to that amount or that system, there has to be a perpetual funding source. And without the county or the city providing some type of tax or perpetual funding source, then you just simply can't bond anything.
I also know that the ingenuity of the human race is without limit. And what you're giving me are practical reasons why you don't think this will happen. What I need are the legal reasons why it can't happen. And in my mind, they have the legal authority through various means that they might come up with to enter into an agreement where there would be some debt. And I still haven't gotten the answer to the question I had is, if they do take on debt, is the city at risk with respect to recourse?
Mr. Linder, have based on what you
The special obligation bonds that are contemplated in the statute, I'd have to find the section, and I don't have it right off the top of my head, but my understanding is that it only goes against the cooperative district, which means that then you're left, in the event the district were to default on its bonds, the bond trustee is left with an interest in the property or a junk bond. But back to the preliminary question, we did remove the ability for them to tax or assess fees in the revised articles of incorporation. So I'm struggling with seeing where they would have the revenue to bond. But I also, and maybe Commissioner Linder and I could look at, Mr. Linder and I could look at this. We can figure out a way to curtail their bonding authorities in the event that.
Even just in general terms, if in fact there was a debt owed on money, whether it was bonded or however the money came about, if there was debt owed and the board just basically goes out of business, is the city left on the hook to pay off any of the debt that is left?
I don't think so, Councilmember Gregory. Again, at least not unless the council had independently undertaken to allocate tax revenue or something as a guarantee for the bonds. And again, that's not being done by this. That would be a separate action where the council would affirmatively dedicate some kind of permanent funding source. Otherwise, again, I can't say there'd be no situation where they wouldn't somehow find a revenue stream or something in order to issue bonds. Again, if some angel investor gave them a huge amount of money and then they took that and invested into a fund or somehow to create that sort of an endowment and then use that, maybe you could do it that way. But again, the city would never be liable on it at that point. It would only, this creates this cooperative district becomes its own legal entity, also with the ability to sue and be sued. And again, unless the city, and again, by passing the resolution creating this district, the city is essentially only giving it permission to exist, and also in return for that, taking the 8 seats on the board of directors that it would then have the ability to appoint. But there would be, again, unless the city affirmatively and separately undertook legal liability for the obligations of the district, I don't believe they could have legal liability for the operations of the district.
Okay. Well, since it's your belief, is there a way to make it definitive by putting some more language into the documents that just totally takes the city out of it, so that in case something ever does happen and everybody defaults, the city is not liable for any of this? Is there a way to do it?
I think you could insert language that, for example, you could there could be a categorical ban on it issuing bonds. If that were in its articles of incorporation, then they would not be able to do that. And it would, unless and until then, at some point down the road, if it became desirable to do so, then it would have to come back to the council and the county commission and the RDA to execute an amendment to the articles of the incorporation. That besides the composition of the board itself, that's the limitation on this district, is whatever this council and the county commission and presumably the RDA would approve as its articles of incorporation, and what that limits its powers and what it can do. So again, if you want a permanent guarantee of limitations or on power, that's the place to put it.
All right, we're gonna get on.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Carrie, I thought that when I read through this, that we excluded the power of the authority to go after bonds already. Is that?
We did that in the funding agreement. We could, as we just mentioned a few seconds ago, we can amend the articles to put
Well,
in
let's
straightforward
amend the
prohibition.
articles to match the funding agreement so that the authority does not have the ability to issue bonds.
Okay.
All right, Councilman Reynolds, and then we'll administration if y'all have anything. Councilman Reynolds.
I just want to get to this point of, and maybe, a revised version of this doesn't exist, but it'd be very easy for this organization to create a steady funding stream that did not involve city council investing money, the county investing money. I mean, it would be very easy. I mean, if they say owned an apartment complex, they created, generated enough funding to have a large ownership stake in, say, an apartment complex, they're going to collect rents off of that. That goes back into the kitty. And then here in Powers, item 16, they have the power to invest in any funds of the district that the board may determine are not presently needed in the operation of its properties, in any investment which may be made by any of its members. I mean, they could make whatever investments they wanted to create a revenue stream that can then be bonded against or loaned against once the organization is structured. There's nothing that limits that. Matter of fact, it just seems like how this structure is set up, it's set up to encourage that sort of activity. And again, they're doing it with the power that is granted to them with no elected officials' input. And that's what we were hired to do in this whole scenario. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Whatever.
I think that we just agreed to limit the power of bonding, correct? So, I mean, we could just waive that last statement. We also agreed that the cooperative could not tax or create a tax. We also agreed that the cooperative could not create a revenue stream of perpetuality. We've done and place all of those things into the funding agreement. If we need to place them into the articles of incorporation, then let's do that so that they mirror each other, so that those powers are totally restricted, so that we can do or get to a point that we can have some type of agreement to where we can actually do neighborhood revitalization without any cause or circumstance or cause of heartache or heartburn from any of the council members, so that we can move forward to try to do this in a correct
I
manner.
have one quick comment.
Can I just,
Hold on.
Just
Joe.
regarding this is a petition. We don't have the ability, and it draws a question of who's really creating all this. Is it the petitioners themselves that's creating that, or is there some other, somebody else is directing and just saying, hey, sign this? I mean, we don't have the ability to amend this. Those petitioners would have to petition us in a different way. I just want to make that point.
yeah. If you want to see an object lesson in how organizations like this can morph and grow and snowball and become semi-governmental and just, you need to read this book, The Power Broker. It's a biography of The Power Broker, which is a biography of a guy called Robert Moses that the city and state of New York gave power to right after the Second World War to deal with infrastructure problems and housing. And when you fly into LaGuardia Airport, everything you see on the island of Manhattan was created by Robert Moses. And it just got completely out of control. And he became a dictator, basically. And so you just got to be very careful about organizations like this.
Well, I think the city has learned its lesson on a few of these organizations too over the years that we created, gave them all these powers, and now we're kind of stuck with some of the leftovers. I do have just a follow up.
Okay, hold up, Chief. Vice President Gregory had one more then.
To go back to the specific projects in the different areas, and you were talking about the revenue would go back into the area. So they're going to be able to keep up with however many different projects are going on and the revenue that is generated from said project to go back to the exact district.
That's why the discussion was that, yes, a certain percentage, not yet determined, will have to be used for administration.
Well,
So
I get
that
the administration part, but the rest of the revenue.
So that part of that would be to have an accounting firm, an accountant, to actually have a bookkeeper, to actually have professional assistance with that, in order to set up your books so that the projects are bifurcated or separated.
So whatever money we put in, a percentage will come off the top for the administrative side of things.
Mhm.
And then the rest of it would go to the project. And then if the project is actually generating revenue, that revenue goes back into that
Is
specific
receipted
area.
back into that project.
Or it sits in an account until another project.
Or until the funding agreement source or county commissioner or council person sets another
Yeah,
specific.
until
project.
another one.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Chief.
I mean, a lot of the same concerns that y'all, having conversations with you, we brought all these concerns up already with Kerry Kamanis and William Carroll. It was me and Jamie Roberts, Steve McNair, and Ricardo that were bet in the same issues. Could they create a taxing or fee structure that would pay for a bond, and whose liability is that? And that's when they began making some concessions within the articles of incorporation that they cannot assess fees or taxes. They also address the unincorporated areas so as to make sure that we were excluding other municipalities who had not heard about this because they were very concerned, Dauphin Island and Saraland. The other concessions that they made was to make sure that they have to follow the Alabama Ethics Act. And so we just had a lot of really big concerns that are very similar to the ones brought up today. A lot of those, and I have to commend them because they did make those concessions. They put in the proper safeties and brought it back to us. And I think all of y'all have a copy of it. I think philosophically, and we brought this up during our meeting at the close of the meeting, there were two issues that we could not resolve because they were philosophically or fundamentally different. One of them had to do that. What's been raised today is that we're creating a quasi-governmental entity that is not accountable to the people that vote in the city of Mobile. That's our major concern. Even though we put the safeties in there, we are now subverting a lot of the authority of the city council to this body that exists that's not accountable to voters. The other, philosophically, we were opposed to using capital funds to be used to pay for operational or housing needs. And it was proposed that maybe we ought to look at a general fund source for this. At the end of the meeting, Kerry Kamanis made an interesting comment. If not the cooperative, what alternatives do you have? Jamie, can you pass? So we met internally again about how do we do that and preserve and not compromise our capital improvement program, which has been highly successful. And so we don't agree with the fact that we don't have the capacity to do this. We think we do have the capacity. We think we have the authority to do it. We think that we can bring these programs to you. We think that if we create a citywide housing improvement program through local taxes, it relieves us of the burden of federal regulations, which makes us a lot more nimble to be able to do things that y'all want done. If it's Mobile Terrace, if it's Maysville, if it's Lower MLK, we will be able to divert money for housing, either housing rehabilitation or to build new affordable workforce housing, because the administration's in agreement that that is a big situation that we need to deal with in the city of Mobile. It's not just city of Mobile, but I think the Chamber of Commerce would agree, Airbus would agree, and our big partners like Austal would agree as well, that that's a concern. The housing improvement program, much like the capital improvement program, we're wanting to pilot this program by dedicating a sustainable funding source of 2% of the business license fees, which after y'all made the adjustments to the NACES codes, make that possible without a negative impact on our revenues for the city of Mobile. We could pilot that not to exceed $1 million. You could take CIP money, go into lower MLK, replace curb and gutter, resurface, put in all of your sidewalks, remove the blight with that money, and then we can come in with the housing improvement program and put the housing back into the vacant lots. And I've got Jamie here to describe or to take details on this program, as well as Steve McNair.
Well, first of all, you mentioned $1 million. $1 million split 7 ways doesn't get you very far. It just doesn't make the impact into the district, and it doesn't make the impact to revitalization in the manner in which the Capital Cooperative District does, and the concentration that's needed to reseed neighborhoods. So when you split $1 million 7 ways, that's what a little bit over $175,000 a piece per year. You can barely get one house done, along with the cost of an administrative staff to do that. And you're going to have to hire at least 2 people. So you're talking about maybe $150,000, $200,000 a year in administrative cost, and you're already eating into your $1 million. Secondly, there's no way for a council member to drill down a specific area within his district to say, this is where I want my $1 million spent, because I don't have $1 million. I'm only looking at the $1 million that the administration is trying to put there for the course of 1 year. So I'm only looking at $175,000. So that really doesn't help to do anything except for possibly half a house when it comes to property acquisition, maintenance of the property, title clearing, and all the costs that go associated with that. So it's really not doing what you're speculating that it will do based on what the Capital Cooperative District, and that's just at a glance from hearing what you just said. I hadn't really drilled down into this yet. The thought is admirable, but the question to ask is, why after 12 years, now you all of a sudden want to start this type of project, now that you see that we have a project or a Capital Cooperative District that actually works and will benefit the city. You guys have been down here now 12 years. So why now? That's the next question, after you've seen what's put in place and the capabilities of what's been put in place. Seems like there's something else on the move here. And you know, to be honest, in order to get the equity that we need, you know, we don't need $1 million with $175,000 of it split in 7 different places. We need $1 million per year more into a specific area to get the type of equity that we need.
So in response to the first part of that, I'll let you talk about the 12-year thing. I wasn't here 12 years ago. There's traditionally 3 different capital expenditures that have been allowed through the Capital Improvement Fund. Maintaining city facilities, city-owned infrastructure, and public safety through nuisance abatement, so blight removal. The $1 million doesn't preclude any of that still being funded. It may not be a street. It may be a demo of an orphanage. I know we've been looking at that in Councilor Penn's district, where we go back and potentially demolish that and then put an apartment complex behind it. There's capital improvement and disimprovement, if you're talking about blight, actions that can complement housing. The $1 million would be just towards the housing piece. And this is, I don't know if Jim mentioned, this would be a pilot program to see how it goes the first year.
Yeah, but again, yeah, that's not $1 million per district. That is $1 million over 7 districts, which basically is $175,000 per district, which doesn't get you anything. All this is just a flash in the pants to say, okay, guys, look, let's do this. But it doesn't get us the equity that the campground needs. It doesn't get us the equity that the bottom needs. It doesn't get us the equity that Maysville needs. It doesn't get us the equity that DIP South along Dog River does. And to be honest, since the District 4 councilman left, it doesn't get him the equity on Navco Road and Navco along Dog River. Dog River Park in that neighborhood is declining faster than any other neighborhood in the city. So what are you going to say to all of us in all 7 districts that we do with $175,000 a year to create any type of equity in a neighborhood that would encourage other developers to come in behind them and say, okay, let's build here?
And again, we mentioned this as a pilot program for which we have earmarked this fund source that's sustainable. It's $1 million to run this pilot. It does not preclude any of y'all from participating with your CIP, despite the fact that we don't think that's a good use of your CIP. Your CIP could be used the way we just described. It could remove the blight from the area. It could replace curb and gutter or infrastructure in the area, sidewalks. We're just talking about using this money dedicated to putting housing on there. It doesn't preclude you from doing what you're trying to do, but what it does do, even if we do it this way, at least 100% of the capital money goes toward the program and not the operational costs of creating another entity.
That's a fundamental belief. There is no state law that says that capital money cannot be used for revitalization and housing redevelopment. There's no law that states that it cannot be done. That is a philosophy or belief of the administration or whoever within the administration wants to do. But to be honest, people need housing. And to be honest, the other day I had a lady call me and talk to me for 30 minutes, said, oh, y'all did the streets, y'all did the curbs, you did the sidewalks, but every house in my neighborhood is falling apart. My neighborhood is not coming back. When are y'all gonna do something that the people can feel and see that encourages redevelopment in my neighborhood? And $175,000 isn't gonna do that, even if it's a pilot program.
And again, y'all already have the enabling legislation to spend that capital money the way you want to spend it, which includes this either critical repair or however y'all want to put it. We're just offering this option. We'll fund it out of the general fund. At least we're not spending capital money on operational costs.
Well, you just said you'll fund it out of the general fund. That means that you can swap capital for general fund in any other program. There's a way forward here. There's a way forward here for the Capital Cooperative District to work and to work in the manner where it should be, to get into neighborhoods that need it. If you can do this, then you sure can do the other. If you can do this, then you sure can do the Capital Cooperative District. And we can make a better impact on our city, a better impact on our districts and communities that really need vital neighborhood revitalization. The way to do it is not a house here and speckled trout throughout the city with a big black tail over in some neighborhood. The way to do it is to create equity. And for sure, you've seen a program just like this work before. Look at Oakley. Look what happened in Oakley with the OVRF and the simple funding that started there now. It started in 99 and 02. Now it's 25, and look what's happened there. We've done programs like this before that actually work.
It's 2:32. I don't think we have enough time to actually go through all this. I don't know if we need to set up another time frame to break this down. But myself and President Small just sent some things in, some questions. He wanted also to know what's the difference between this proposal and the cooperative district, and why now, and why can't we do both? Yeah.
You know, and Jimmy, I appreciate you all bringing this to us, you know, and thinking it through, because this has been an ongoing conversation for a long time that William has been working on, and, you know, something that we need to address. And of course, some areas of the city are harder hit than others and need more funding and more revitalization than other areas. If there was a way to combine what the focus and the goal of this cooperative district is with what Jamie and his department do within the city doing it, is there a way to bring both into, you know, under the same umbrella, basically, with more funding, hopefully more than this 2%, to do the same sort of thing that William has been, you know, advocating for, that we know that we need? I mean, if there was a way that we could just combine both and do it under the city, I think that would take away a lot of heartburn.
And I think that's what you're seeing us propose, is even though we've offered $1 million out of general fund money, which was a discussion we had about use of capital, y'all already have the ability to move monies into this funding for specific projects, be it Lower MLK, Mobile Terrace, wherever y'all want to do it.
Well, but I think we're going to need more funding coming from the city itself, and not just our capital improvement dollars, but some other funding coming from the city itself to help generate this. Now, if William wants to put $2 million into the program like that would have gone to the cooperative district and put it into Jamie's realm to do the exact same thing, I mean, is that not possible to
It
make
is.
happen?
It is. I mean, you've already amended the ordinance where you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're trying to discourage it, but you certainly could.
Well, I think also one of the issues is the timing, because the thought with the cooperative district is it would happen faster, that they would be doing it on a daily basis, whereas maybe with the city, it takes a little longer to get things done.
Our limitation is the use of federal funds.
Is what?
It's the use of federal funds right now.
Use of federal
Yeah,
funds.
yeah. The only funds we have access to for housing are federal, and those are slow. If there were federal funds available, it goes a lot faster because there's less restrictions. And that's the second page I showed you guys.
Yeah, but
Mr. Chairman.
the
Yeah,
amount of
okay.
it-
Hold on,
I'm
hold
sorry.
on.
Go ahead. You got-
Would you finish, Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a thought. We've been here for a while and we've gone through this cooperative district proposal at length. I'm starting to get a little brain drain. I don't know about y'all. And then, to look at this and start really delving into it and asking a lot of questions, I don't know that I'm necessarily prepared, but I think you see where we're going with this. I mean, I would like to discuss it further to see what the
Yeah.
options would be.
The
but-
hypothetical, what's on the first page there is a
Yeah.
function that's very similar to the capital improvement program. The administration would come to the council, get their take on what's needed, what the location is, the scope they're looking for, go back out to the private sector, do an RFP for proposals, come back to you guys, show you what we got back and see what we want to fund.
Excuse me, but let me say this right now. An RFP for proposals from developers is what's holding us back so many times. When the Capital Cooperative District actually puts together a program, the Capital Cooperative District can hire an architect, the designs are done, everything's met. The Capital Cooperative District can bid the project out, do bid and award services, and speed the process out. The method in which you're undertaking slows the project down, it encumbers costs, it adds additional costs to the process. The method in which you're thinking is more along of multifamily housing, which does not fit the directive in which we're trying to do to get single family housing into a specific district or area. So what you're doing is adding costs to what we're trying to accomplish. So, and then on top of that, in order to execute that, you have to have someone within the administration that is an executor and not a planner. That means you have to have someone that can actually go through the process from concept through SD, DD, CD, bid and award service, and get it out to bid and actually perform a project. Responded to RFPs and scattered sites with a spot here, a spot there, and a block here. It doesn't work, Jamie.
And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is whatever the concept is, we'd have to go through the procurement process same as a co-op would.
Procurement process meaning?
Yeah, if it's a professional service, you make sure it's equitable, so you're hiring multiple groups of people, not the same person over and over again. But if it's a large scale scope, you'd put that out as a proposal coming back to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hey, hold
the
on.
last thing I want
Hey,
to see
hold
happen.
on. Hey,
Hold on, Mr.
hey,
Chair.
hey,
The last
Councilman
thing I
Davis
wanna
been
see
waiting,
happen-
William. Well,
Look, one sentence,
hey,
please.
let
One sentence, one sentence.
he been waiting, William.
One sentence.
He been waiting.
I
He
just
been,
said the sentence already.
hey, he been waiting. I know.
I could've said the sentence already.
He been begging. You just hold it. Councilman Davis.
I want to make a couple of things clear. One is everybody on the city council is interested in affordable housing. Everybody on the city councils. The question is, what path do we take to get there? That's the question. Now, right now, I can't support either of these two paths, the cooperative district or the one that the chief of staff has come up with. I think that I think that you could put $1 million into it as far as the chief of staff's program. You could put $1 million into it. You could put $2 million into it. You could put $15 million into it. And it's going to be a drop in the bucket. And how are you going to choose who gets the help and who doesn't get the help? And for every person you help, there's going to be 20 people who didn't get help. And on what basis are you going to make those determinations so it's fair and equitable? So and you're taking money, you're taking millions of dollars from all kinds of projects that we got this project over here. We don't know what's going to happen with it. We got $300 million in deferred maintenance in the city's infrastructure still, or more. And I don't see that I don't see that that would be efficacious. Now, that's all I have to say.
All right, my 1 sentence. All right. Jamie, I don't want to come back to you 3 years from now and ask you, based on what you guys are doing in y'all's plan and how you're executing, how many houses you built, and you tell me, oh, we've done one. We've done one. Prime example, the HOPE program. You know, we've done maybe 1, 2, I don't even know how many over the time we've done. This is about equity and about reestablishing neighborhoods. And you're not going to do it trickling. You're going to have to do it by creating block equity that then encourages other developers to come in and buy up property around the equity that you're creating. The chamber's looking to do the same thing. I talked at length to the chamber 2 weeks ago. They loved it because these are people in the industry that understand how the industry works, and they understand the need of equitable situations in order to get in, to come in and to do housing, to be able to do market rate housing amongst affordable, attainable, and attainable housing, also workforce housing. I commend the idea, but it's hard to perceive. The other thing is that you already have enough to do, you know, and to create another layer of what one person having to be accountable to you for everything that you do over and over and over again for $175,000 a year in one district, just doesn't get it. It doesn't add up. The math just doesn't work. I'd like to see a way forward here. I mean, it sounds like you're trying to create the capital cooperative district within the city. That's what it sounds like. Yeah, because you love the idea.
Well, it's a good idea.
Yeah, you love it, but you want to take my idea and put it into the city and water it down with only $1 million a year. Brother, let me tell you something. We worked for 1.5 years on this to get it right.
No,
and it's great for y'all to love it. It's great for me to know that y'all love it and you want to make it your own, but it's sad that you want to put $1 million a year at it over 7 districts. And then, according to what I just heard, oh, well, you just take your CIP money and do the sidewalks and the curbs and gutters and all those things and let us do the housing part. That doesn't get us the equity that we need, Jamie. I mean, it's great that you want to take my concept. I love the idea that you want to take my concept and use it. It just means to me and the rest of this council that, hey, it works and we like it. It works and we like it.
The concept seems like it would work. The entity, the authorities are very broad. So that, and there's nothing that it can do that the city can't already do in the existing functions. We just don't have non-federal funds.
Okay.
And I want to just make this comment so that I can get out of here.
Go ahead.
Just for the
Is it-
general public and everybody to understand.
Councilman Reynolds.
The further the government is removed from you and your community, the harder it is to reach and influence. That's all I want to say.
Mr. Chairman, you mind if I make a few remarks?
Yes.
So this is a draft outline. You've obviously had about 10 minutes to read it. You have many questions. That is perfectly fair. This is a starting place to begin this conversation. Now, no one in this room disagrees that housing is important. Nobody disagrees that we need to not focus on housing. We need to focus on housing in this city. The mayor's made that very clear. And so what he is proposing here is an alternative plan that does not require the creation of a third-party, unelected governmental body over the entire county. Now, what this does is two things: is a pilot program, number one. So it's $1 million that you'll see in the first year for projects. Number two, it is a dedicated funding stream. Number three, there's been questions about capacity. So what this plan will do is it will allow a outside hire to work under Jamie's division, who is an expert in development work, who is an expert when it comes to construction, budgets, managing public-private partnerships, who would be on a professional services contract. Furthermore, nobody here has said the money would be split evenly between the districts because we don't even know what projects are going to be proposed yet from the city council members. So when you look at the outline here, it says council members can propose plans, those will then be evaluated, and then funding can then go towards those projects. And so this is an outline to begin a conversation to discuss an alternative to having to create a new entity. Because when you ask yourselves, what can the cooperative district do hypothetically that the city cannot do? The city can do all of those things with the right funding and the right manpower. This city alternative would not disallow the county from participating, from private entities from participating. In fact, those are the kind of things that we will encourage to happen because we see a lot of value in that. We see that it's working as a team for these projects, especially if a county commissioners are already identified funding and a particular project. Those are the kind of projects that could be focused on first as part of this pilot program. So please take some thought, take some time. Don't throw this out the window quite yet. We firmly believe that something like this can really work well. And so the other day when we were having a meeting in here with Councilman Carroll, the question was, what is the main thing the cooperative district would be able to do the city can't do? And the response was somebody would get up every day to think about this, to work on it, to be dedicated to it. And that is exactly what we're proposing. And in addition to having that staff member who would be on contract on professional services, clearing title and getting the type of title work done is paramount for any project to move forward. We will have more resources and staff members dedicated to this, to clear title, to make these kind of projects come to fruition. So we're not taking a shotgun approach to this. This is a scalpel approach, and that we're going to be very thoughtful. We're going to work with the council members and work with our partners and have those professionals clearing title and working the project management on time and on budget, to your point, Mr. Carroll, because we don't want to do one house in the next 4 years. We want to do as many of these projects as you have in mind every year and as funding allows. So that's that's the basis for our direction.
Ms. McNair, I've been back here almost 3 years, if not 3 years to the day. And first of all, how many titles have you cleared since I've been back? How many? None.
20 to 25.
All right. How many have you cleared? How many? 20 to 25 based on the number that we had before I left here, which was how many 100 plus or so. How many have you cleared? 20, 25 in 3 years? Yeah, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, that's not even a grain of sand off the beach. You're not getting me anywhere. And on top of that, you just brought the biggest problem into play, which is politics among council members, when you're saying what projects are going to be awarded and which projects we're going to consider. There's no way $1 million is going to do anything basically in one district. You just put politics back in it as far as which districts are going to get what money. Right now, the biggest needs are in districts 1, 2, and 3. And then the next one is in 7. That's where the need is. So now you got to split that $1 million but basically 4 places if possible. And then we're not talking about more than $200,000, which only does a parcel a day. A pilot program, this is like that bridge that doggone Ben Brooks wanted to build, a bridge to nowhere. This is just what that is. Bring me something that works like the Capital Cooperative District does, with the amount of equity that it's going to give to a neighborhood, with the amount of equity that it's going to give to a community, with a basis that has something that's going to bring other developers in. A house on this block in District 7 and a house on this block in District 3 and a house on this block in District 2 doesn't work, sir. I mean, you are a builder. You should know better.
Councilman, when it comes to, as you say, we're entering the political zone here, dealing with the city council administrative and the administration, as opposed to 3 different governmental entities that then create a 4th governmental entity, is much, much easier when it comes to getting these projects done. But I want to address one more thing. There's a key word that I use when discussing the title: more resources, because we agree we need to do more, and that's exactly what this plan will do.
Well, in the Capital Cooperative District.
This is going to be the last comment.
In the Capital Cooperative District, every resource that the city of the county has is embodied within the Capital Cooperative District. And that Capital Cooperative District has the same resources, with lawyers and people that can do it daily and quickly, as opposed to deal with the bureaucracy of city government. And if the city government was capable, or had been capable, of doing multiple houses in redevelopment over the last 3 years, then we would already see equitable revitalization in neighborhoods. We would already see that.
Thank you so much for everybody for coming out. If y'all have any more questions, reach out to Councilman Carroll, administration. And this meeting has been adjourned. Thank you.
Wait a minute. Oh, what's our next plan? Are we going to vote this up or down next Tuesday, or are we going to?
I can't tell if,
Are we going
I
to?
don't know.
It-
More time. Yeah, I mean, we held it. Yeah, I think we need to
I'll edit to remove the bonding power. and-
reach out to everybody to get there
Yes.
We'll make the amendments to the capital cooperative.
and then send it out.
And then we'll send it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
But this right here, the administration presented, they can do that on their own. They don't need our